What has to happen in your heart to truly see what your children need? They don't need the next PS4. They don't need an Android phone or the new iPhone, or do they need you? They need their dad. So just take time to pray and ask God to give you a heart of empathy for those around you. Ask him to give you the discernment to make you aware of what's going on in their lives, as well as the courage to act on it. Because he will reveal it to you, and then you need to act on it. All right, Genesis 1:27, going to the Old Testament. All right, it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Okay, now we've probably read this 100 times, and it's easy to read these verses in Genesis and just breeze right past them without stopping to really reflect on what they mean for us as men. And yet, the statement that God made us in his image, guys, it should stop us right in our tracks. After all, this wasn't said about anything else in God's creation. It was only said about humans. Not monkeys, not bears, lions or tigers or bears, oh my. There's nothing else said about that in anything else. It was only said about us, the humans. So shouldn't we spend time thinking about what this means for us and our identity as men? What does it mean that we were created or we were made in God's image? I don't think it has anything to do with our physical makeup. He's not a biological person in the way we understand the concept anyway. So being made in God's image must be something other than appearance. I think there's a few ways we can understand this. First, the first is tied to the second part of verse 26. Being made in God's image means we have dominion or rule over creation. We're the apex of creation. We've been given rule in a way that no other created thing has been given rule. There are aspects of our world that we are in charge or in command of. But here's the deal. Our rule was always intended to mirror God's rule. We are to rule with justness, fairness, compassion, humility, and so on, the things that Paul talked about. Being made in God's likeness means, in part, being good stewards of anything he has entrusted to us. Our spouses, our children, his mission, guys, even our very lives. Second, being made in God's image means we have a shadow of God's nature in us. Well, we'll never exhibit these traits anywhere near as perfectly or even universally as God will. We have the capacity to be loving, forgiving, steadfast, just, and so on. Being made in God's image means that we have the potential ourselves. How is the world around us better because of God's nature flowing out of us? How are we reflecting God's character in our homes and workplaces? In what ways are our conversations with others ripe for God's nature to transform our world? See, being created in God's image isn't some abstract theological concept. It's a true statement about the nature of our identity as Christ followers. Because, guys, we've been given rule or leadership responsibility over certain areas in our lives. Some of these areas I'm going to have you think about, but think about how you would describe your rule here. What kind of leader are you in these areas of your life? Okay, so what kind of leader are you in your marriage? If you're married, how do you lead your wife? What does that look like? Remember earlier we talked about putting others in front of yourselves. How does that look in your marriage? And how does that look with your children if you have kids? Or if you're discipling some young man, how does your leadership look with them? In your career, just time and job gives you authority over others. What does your leadership look like at work? Or in church? Are you in a fellowship of believers, of like-minded believers? And what does your leadership look like there? Because all leaders have a legacy. How would you describe the legacy you're building for the areas that I just mentioned? What's your legacy going to look like in your marriage, your children, your career, your church? After you're gone, what will that legacy look like? Are you satisfied with that? I mean, think about that. Are you satisfied with your leadership role in your marriage, with your kids, with your career, and with your church? What can you do to continue to grow in your legacy as a leader? I mean, if you're satisfied with those, how do you keep growing in that area? If you're not, what can you do to change? You're still on this side of the grave. There's still time to change. And what can you do to become a better leader in your marriage, better leader for your kids, better leader at your job, and a better leader at your church? So guys, just spend some time asking God to show you a picture of how you've stewarded the rule He's entrusted you with. Ask Him to show you areas in which you've acted in His image by replicating His qualities in your world. And ask Him also to reveal the areas where you need to rely on Him for improvement. So guys, I will put up on the website on this for identity, those qualities Paul talked about: compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience, bearing with one another, forgiving, loving. And figure out what those are. What are those supposed to mean in your life, and what do you do with that? All right, we are running out of time here. I just want to remind you that we're planning a manUP trip to Israel. It's going to be a small group of guys going, and like I said, we're going to hike northern Israel, and we'll get as far as we can. We're planning all that out so that it's not too much of a. We don't want to kill ourselves. I mean, we're in Israel. We want to see what's going on there, but to walk where Jesus and the disciples walked, from Galilee down to Jerusalem. And like I said, we'll have a van. We're going to be camping. So one guy's already reserved one of the seats in the van. He doesn't want to sleep in a tent, but that's all right. And we'll be making that trek down there, and then spend a couple of days in Jerusalem, part of a day down at the Dead Sea, down in southern Israel, and just spend some time in fellowship, get to know some of the guys and see what God does while we're over there. I mean, if you've never been to Israel, it takes what you read in black and white and just brings it into living color. I mean, it's amazing. All right, also, website, manupshow.org, www.manupshow.org, manupshow.org. Go there. You can start listening to a proverb of the day or reading it. We've got it on there. You listen to the previous shows. This one was Identity in Christ. There's going to be a total of 8 of them. So we've got identity, integrity's up there, purpose, surrender, passion, commitment. We've got compassion and influence left. So, all right, there's our music. We are out. All right, guys, let me know if you want to go to Israel. Semper Fi. Bye.